She never meant to fall into his arms that day on the crowded train. He never expected the woman in the designer suit to whisper words that would crack open his carefully guarded heart. But sometimes, the universe has plans that defy our carefully constructed walls. Asterisk. Hey there, welcome to Heartstring Stories. If you're joining us for the first time, you're about to experience a journey that might just remind you why we're all searching for connection in this chaotic world. If this story touches your heart, please consider hitting that like button and subscribing to our channel for more stories that celebrate the unexpected moments that change lives forever. The 7:15 morning train to Manhattan was running late. Again. Marcus Reed shifted his weight from one foot to the other, checking his watch for the third time in as many minutes. The platform was more crowded than usual, bodies pressed together in the particular brand of forced intimacy that only public transportation could create. His phone buzzed in his pocket, probably the school, wondering where Emma's lunch was. The lunch he'd forgotten on the kitchen counter in his rush to drop her at before-school care and make this train. Damn it, he muttered, running a hand over his close-cropped hair. One more parenting fail to add to his growing collection. When the train finally screeched into the station, the crowd surged forward like a wave. Marcus found himself pushed into a corner of the car, managing to claim one of the last available seats. He closed his eyes briefly, calculating how many hours of sleep he'd managed to get last night. 4. Maybe 5 if he counted the half-hour he'd dozed off while helping Emma with her science project. The train lurched forward suddenly, and someone fell heavily into his lap. Oh my God. I'm so sorry. Marcus's eyes flew open to find a woman scrambling to right herself, her face flushed with embarrassment. She was dressed in what he recognized as expensive business attire, a tailored charcoal suit that probably cost more than his monthly rent, her dark hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail that emphasized sharp cheekbones and even sharper eyes. It's fine, he said automatically, helping steady her with a hand on her arm. These trains are death traps. She managed to grab the overhead rail, still half hovering over him as the train swayed. I should have been holding on properly. I was trying to answer an email and, she stopped abruptly, noticing something on his jacket. Oh no, I've spilled coffee on you. Marcus looked down at the spreading brown stain on his only decent work shirt and sighed. Perfect. Just perfect. Don't worry about it, he said, though his tone betrayed his frustration. It's been that kind of morning. The woman bit her lip, looking genuinely distressed. Please, let me pay for the dry cleaning. It's the least I can do. Really, it's fine. The last thing Marcus needed was charity from some corporate executive who probably spent more on coffee each week than he did on groceries. The train jerked again, and the woman nearly lost her balance once more. Without thinking, Marcus reached out to steady her, and she ended up perched on the edge of his knee, both of them now sharing the single seat in a way that would have been awkward if the train hadn't been so packed that no one even noticed. I guess we're sharing, she said with a small laugh. I'm Alexandra, by the way. Alex. Marcus. She nodded toward his phone, which was lighting up with another call from Emma's school. Looks like someone really needs to reach you. Marcus grimaced and answered the call, trying to keep his voice low. Yes, I know. I forgot her lunch. I'm on the train. Can she get something from the cafeteria? I'll pay tomorrow. He paused, listening. No, she can't have the peanut butter option. She's allergic, it's in her file. Another pause. Yes, I understand you're short-staffed. I'm doing my best here. He hung up, aware that Alex was pretending not to listen but had clearly heard every word. Single dad, she asked quietly. That obvious? The combination of exhaustion, coffee stains, and the school lunch emergency gave it away. Her smile was surprisingly warm. How old? Emma's 8. And apparently starving to death because her father can't remember to grab a paper bag off the counter. Alex's expression softened. My mother used to forget my lunch at least once a week. I survived. Yeah, well, Emma's mother never forgot a lunch. Or a permission slip. Or a birthday. The bitterness in his voice surprised even him. He rarely spoke about Layla to anyone, let alone strangers on trains. Alex was quiet for a moment. Then, so softly he almost didn't hear it over the rumble of the train, she whispered, "Sometimes the people who seem to have it all together are just better at hiding their broken pieces." Something about those words, or perhaps the way she said them, with a raw understanding that felt too personal to be mere sympathy, made Marcus really look at her for the first time. Beyond the expensive suit and confident posture, he saw the faint shadows under her eyes, carefully concealed with makeup. The slight tension in her jaw. The way her knuckles whitened as she gripped the handrail. This woman might look like she had everything figured out, but Marcus recognized the signs of someone carrying a heavy weight. He knew them too well from his own mirror. "Your stop is coming up," she said suddenly, nodding toward the electronic display. Marcus blinked in surprise. "How did you know?" "Your building ID." She gestured to the badge clipped to his belt. "Midtown Insurance Group. They're 3 blocks from my office." The train began to slow, and Alex stood, allowing Marcus to gather his things. As passengers shifted to make way for those exiting, she reached into her purse and pulled out a business card. "Alexandra Chen, CEO, Horizon Innovations," Marcus read aloud, raising an eyebrow. "If you ever need a job with more flexible hours for single parents, we're always looking for good people." She hesitated, then added, "And we have an excellent cafeteria. Emergency lunches included." Before Marcus could respond, the doors opened and the crowd pushed him onto the platform. Through the window, he caught one last glimpse of Alex as the train pulled away, her eyes finding his for a brief moment before she disappeared. Marcus stood there, the business card still in his hand, feeling as though something significant had just happened, though he couldn't quite say what. Alexandra Chen had built her life around control. Control of her schedule, her emotions, her company, her image. Control was safe. Control meant never being blindsided again. So why couldn't she stop thinking about the stranger on the train? "Miss Chen? They're ready for you in the boardroom." Alex looked up from her computer to find her assistant, Priya, hovering in the doorway of her office. The morning's quarterly review meeting with the board of directors, how had she forgotten? She glanced at her watch, 9:15. She'd been staring at the same spreadsheet for nearly an hour, her mind repeatedly drifting back to the tired eyes of the single father and the coffee stain spreading across his shirt. "Thank you, Priya. I'll be right there." As she gathered her presentation materials, Alex caught her reflection in the glass wall of her office. To anyone else, she looked perfectly put together, the very image of a successful tech CEO. No one would guess that she'd barely slept in weeks, that her apartment felt too large and too empty, that sometimes she wondered if all of this, the company she'd built from nothing, the fortune she'd amassed, the respect she'd earned, was worth the cost. The boardroom fell silent as she entered, 12 pairs of eyes turning to watch her approach the head of the table. This was her element. Here, she knew exactly who she was and what was expected of her. "Good morning, everyone," she began, her voice steady and confident. "Before we dive into the quarterly numbers, I want to discuss a new initiative I've been considering." For the next hour, Alex was the CEO they all expected, sharp, visionary, uncompromising. She fielded questions about market strategy and defended her decision to delay the launch of their newest software platform. She presented growth projections that made several board members nod in approval. It wasn't until the meeting was wrapping up that Walter Gaines, the oldest board member and her most consistent critic, cleared his throat. "While the numbers look promising, Alexandra, I'm concerned about your recent distractions." Alex felt her spine stiffen. "I'm not sure what you mean, Walter." "The charity work. The mentorship programs. The proposed on-site childcare facility. He waved a dismissive hand. Noble causes, certainly, but they're pulling focus from our core business objectives. I disagree, Alex replied coolly. Our employee retention has improved 15% since implementing the mentorship program, and the projected ROI on the childcare facility. The board isn't interested in social experiments, Walter interrupted. We're interested in shareholder value. Your personal life shouldn't be influencing company policy. The room went uncomfortably quiet. Everyone present knew what Walter was referring to. The very public end of Alex's engagement 6 months ago, splashed across business publications with headlines like, Tech's Power Couple Splits, Chen Left at the Altar. My personal life has nothing to do with these initiatives, Alex said, her voice dangerously calm. But if we're going to discuss relevance, Walter, perhaps we should address your opposition to our digital transformation strategy, which has increased our market share by 22% despite your predictions of failure. Walter's face reddened, but before he could respond, Alex stood. If there's nothing else, I have another meeting. The full report is in your packets. Thank you for your time. She walked out of the boardroom with her head high, maintaining her composure until she reached her office and closed the door. Only then did she allow her shoulders to drop, leaning against the wall and closing her eyes. Bastard, she muttered. Her phone chimed with a text from Priya, you okay? Want me to accidentally spill coffee on Walter's lap next meeting? Despite herself, Alex smiled. The image reminded her of this morning's train incident, the mortification of landing in a stranger's lap, followed by that unexpected moment of connection. There had been something refreshingly honest about Marcus. No pretense, no agenda, just a tired father doing his best. On impulse, Alex opened her laptop and typed Marcus and Midtown Insurance Group into the search bar. It took only a few minutes to find him, Marcus Reed, claims adjuster. His company profile showed a professional headshot of a man in his mid-30s with warm brown eyes and a smile that didn't quite reach them. Alex hesitated, her finger hovering over the mouse. This was ridiculous. She was the CEO of a tech company valued at over $1 billion. She didn't have time for, whatever this was. Curiosity? Interest? A desperate attempt to connect with someone who hadn't looked at her and seen dollar signs or headlines? She closed the browser window and turned back to her work. She had a company to run. A reputation to maintain. A life carefully constructed to prevent exactly the kind of messiness that came from following impulses. But as the day wore on, Alex found herself thinking about what she'd whispered to Marcus on the train. Sometimes the people who seem to have it all together are just better at hiding their broken pieces. She'd been talking about his ex-wife. But she could have been talking about herself. Marcus's day went from bad to worse. After arriving at work with a coffee-stained shirt, he discovered that the Johnson claim, the one he'd stayed up until midnight working on, had been reassigned to Brad Thompson, the department's golden boy. Then his supervisor had called him in for a quick chat about his productivity metrics, which apparently weren't meeting expectations. We understand you have personal circumstances, Gerald had said, not quite meeting Marcus's eyes. But the company needs consistency, Reed. Reliability. I've never missed a deadline, Marcus had pointed out, fighting to keep his voice level. No, but your numbers are down. And there have been complaints about your availability for client calls after 4 o'clock. Because he had to pick up his daughter from after-school care by 5:30 or pay late fees he couldn't afford. Because he was trying to be both mother and father to a little girl who still cried for her mom sometimes in the middle of the night. Because he was doing his absolute best, and it still wasn't enough. But he just nodded and promised to work on it. Now, sitting at his desk with a throbbing headache, Marcus pulled out the business card he'd been given that morning. Alexandra Chen, CEO. He ran his thumb over the embossed lettering, remembering her whispered words on the train. On a whim, he typed her name into his computer. The search results were immediate and overwhelming. Alexandra Chen, tech prodigy who'd founded Horizon Innovations at 24. Now 33, she'd built it into one of the fastest-growing companies in the country. There were articles about her leadership style, her innovation strategies, her philanthropic work. And then there were the gossip pieces. Tech CEO left at the altar. Chen's fiancé runs off with model half her age. Ice Queen of Silicon Alley, too successful for love? Marcus frowned, clicking away from those headlines. He knew all too well how the media could reduce a person's pain to clickbait. After Layla's death, there had been the initial sympathetic coverage, young mother's tragic battle with cancer, heartbroken husband left to raise daughter alone. But interest had quickly faded, leaving Marcus and Emma to figure out their new reality in a world that had already moved on to the next tragedy. His phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. Emma's school. Again. Mr. Reed? This is Nurse Patel. Emma's not feeling well. She's complaining of a stomachache and wants to go home. Marcus closed his eyes. If he left now, after his conversation with Gerald. Mr. Reed? Are you there? Yes, sorry. I'll be there as soon as I can. He hung up and began packing his things, already composing the email he'd send to Gerald explaining his early departure. As he stood to leave, his gaze fell once more on Alexandra Chen's business card. More flexible hours for single parents, she'd said. Maybe it was worth a call. Emma was curled up on the nurse's office cot when Marcus arrived, her face pale and her arms wrapped around her middle. Hey, sunshine, he said softly, kneeling beside her. Not feeling so great, huh? She shook her head, her brown curls, so like her mother's, falling across her face. My tummy hurts. And I'm hungry. Marcus winced. The forgotten lunch. I'm sorry about that, Em. I messed up this morning. It's okay, Daddy. Ms. Patel gave me some crackers. The school nurse approached, clipboard in hand. She doesn't have a fever, but she hasn't been herself today. The teacher said she was quiet during morning activities. Marcus nodded, helping Emma sit up. We had a rough night. Science project ran late. What he didn't say was that Emma had dissolved into tears halfway through, saying she wanted her mom to help instead. That he'd spent an hour holding her while she sobbed, then another hour trying to salvage the half-completed solar system model. That he'd gone to bed feeling like he was failing at the one job that mattered most. Can we go home now? Emma asked, her voice small. Absolutely. And I'm thinking maybe ice cream for lunch? To make up for my morning brain freeze? That earned him a tiny smile. With sprinkles? Is there any other way to have ice cream? 20 minutes later, they were seated at Gino's ice cream parlor, Emma carefully constructing what she called a sprinkle mountain on top of her chocolate scoop. Marcus watched her, marveling as he often did at her resilience. 3 years since Layla's death, and Emma still had moments of heartbreaking grief, but she also had this, the ability to find joy in sprinkles and ice cream on a Tuesday afternoon. Daddy, is that lady taking a picture of us? Marcus turned to see a woman quickly lowering her phone. She smiled apologetically and approached their table. I'm so sorry, I wasn't taking a photo. You two reminded me of something, and I got caught staring. My apologies. Marcus nodded, though he felt a flicker of unease. In the years since Layla's death, he'd developed a wariness of strangers' interest in him and Emma. Too many people had approached with that look of pitying curiosity, wanting to hear their sad story or offer unsolicited advice. No problem, he said, his tone making it clear the conversation was over. The woman hesitated, then returned to her table. Marcus turned his attention back to Emma, who was now creating an elaborate story about her ice cream sprinkles being a magical village. His phone buzzed with an email notification from Gerald. Need to discuss your early departure tomorrow morning. 8 a.m. sharp. Marcus slipped the phone back into his pocket without responding. Tomorrow's problems could wait. Right now, there was ice cream to eat and a daughter to make smile. Alex hadn't meant to work late again, but the quarterly reports needed reviewing and the product development team had hit another snag with the new platform. By the time she left the office, the streets were dark and most of the other buildings had emptied. Her driver, Miguel, was waiting with the car. "Long day, Miss Chen?" he asked as he held the door for her. "Aren't they all?" she replied with a tired smile. As they pulled into traffic, Alex leaned her head against the cool window, watching the city lights blur together. She should be reviewing the notes for tomorrow's investor call or at least checking her emails. Instead, she found herself thinking about Marcus Reed and his daughter. After their chance encounter, she'd done something she rarely did, looked into someone's background out of personal rather than professional interest. Nothing invasive, just public information. Marcus Reed, 36, claims adjuster at Midtown Insurance. Widower. His wife, Layla Reed, had died of ovarian cancer 3 years ago, leaving him to raise their daughter alone. Alex wasn't sure why his story had affected her so deeply. Perhaps because it was a stark reminder that her own problems, a broken engagement, board pressure, media scrutiny, paled in comparison to real loss. Or perhaps because in his tired eyes, she'd recognized a familiar struggle, the effort to appear whole when you felt anything but. "Miss Chen?" Miguel's voice broke through her thoughts. "We're here." Alex looked up, surprised to find they'd arrived at her building. "Thank you, Miguel. Have a good night." "You too, Miss Chen. Try to get some rest." Her apartment occupied the top 2 floors of an exclusive building in Tribeca, a space that had been featured in architectural magazines and that she'd once loved for its clean lines and panoramic views. Now, as she stepped inside and the lights automatically illuminated in response to her presence, it just felt empty. Alex kicked off her heels and poured herself a glass of wine, carrying it to the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city. Somewhere out there was a single father, probably putting his daughter to bed, maybe reading her a story or checking homework. She took a sip of wine and made a decision. Tomorrow, she would call Marcus Reed and offer him an interview. Not because she felt sorry for him, she suspected he'd hate that, but because their brief interaction had shown her something genuine in a world where authenticity was rare. And maybe, just maybe, because she was tired of coming home to an empty apartment and a life that looked perfect on paper but felt hollow in reality. Marcus was already at his desk when Gerald arrived the next morning, coffee in hand and a carefully prepared explanation for yesterday's early departure. "Reed," Gerald said, gesturing toward his office. "Let's talk." The conversation was brief and to the point. Midtown Insurance was restructuring, and Marcus's position was being consolidated. He had 2 weeks, a modest severance package, and Gerald's sincere regrets. "This isn't about yesterday," Gerald assured him, not quite meeting his eyes. "It's a company-wide initiative." But they both knew it was at least partly about yesterday, and the day before, and all the days when Marcus had to choose between being the employee they wanted and the father Emma needed. He cleaned out his desk methodically, packing 8 years of his professional life into a cardboard box. Photos of Emma. A coffee mug she'd painted for Father's Day. The stress ball with the company logo that he'd squeezed countless times during difficult calls. As he was leaving, Brad Thompson stopped him in the hallway. "Tough break, Reed," he said, with what seemed like genuine sympathy. "For what it's worth, I voted against the cuts in our department." Marcus nodded, not trusting himself to speak. "If you need a reference," Brad continued, "I'd be happy to." "Thanks," Marcus interrupted. "I appreciate it." Outside, the spring air was unexpectedly warm, the sky a clear, mocking blue. Marcus set his box on a bench and pulled out his phone, staring at the screen. Who should he call first? His sister in Chicago? His landlord to warn about potentially late rent? The after-school program to see if they offered reduced rates for unemployed parents? Instead, he found himself pulling out Alexandra Chen's business card. Before he could talk himself out of it, he dialed the number. Horizon Innovations, how may I direct your call? Marcus hesitated. My name is Marcus Reed. Alexandra Chen gave me her card yesterday. I was hoping to speak with her. One moment, please. There was a long pause, and Marcus was about to hang up, feeling foolish, when a familiar voice came on the line. Marcus? This is Alex. Hi, he said, suddenly unsure why he'd called. I hope I'm not bothering you. Not at all. In fact, I was planning to call you today. You were? Yes. I meant what I said about Horizon looking for good people. We have an opening in our claims processing division that I think might interest you. More flexible hours, better benefits, and an on-site childcare center for after-school hours. Marcus blinked, looking down at the box containing his professional life. That's quite a coincidence. I just got laid off. There was a pause. I'm sorry to hear that. Though selfishly, it makes my pitch easier. Would you be interested in coming in for an interview? Tomorrow, perhaps? Tomorrow would be perfect, Marcus said, a weight lifting from his shoulders. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, Alex replied, and he could hear the smile in her voice. Our interview process is notoriously challenging. But I have a feeling you're up to it. After they'd arranged the details, Marcus sat on the bench for a long moment, staring at his phone. The day that had started with disaster had somehow turned around completely. He wasn't naive enough to think an interview guaranteed a job, but it was hope, something he'd been running short on lately. With newfound energy, he picked up his box and headed for the subway. He had a resume to update and a daughter to pick up from school. For the first time in months, he was looking forward to tomorrow. Horizon Innovations occupied a sleek glass building in the heart of the tech district. As Marcus approached the entrance, Emma's words from that morning echoed in his mind, "You look handsome, Daddy." Like a superhero pretending to be normal. He'd splurged on a new shirt, no coffee stains this time, and had even gotten a haircut. Emma had insisted on helping him choose his tie, selecting a blue one with tiny stars that she declared lucky. The lobby was a hive of activity, young professionals moving purposefully across polished floors. At the reception desk, Marcus gave his name and was directed to the 14th floor. Mr. Reed, a young woman greeted him as he stepped off the elevator. I'm Priya, Miss Chen's assistant. She's looking forward to meeting with you. We've actually met briefly, Marcus said, following her down a corridor lined with glass-walled offices. Priya smiled knowingly. Yes, the train incident. She mentioned it. Before Marcus could respond, they arrived at a conference room where 3 people were waiting, a man in his 40s with a tablet, a younger woman with bright red hair, and Alexandra Chen. She looked different in her element, more commanding, perhaps, but also more at ease. She stood to greet him, extending her hand. Marcus, thank you for coming. This is David from HR and Sophia, who heads our claims division. The interview began professionally enough, with standard questions about his experience and skills. Marcus found himself relaxing as he described his work at Midtown, the systems he'd helped implement, the client relationships he'd built. Then Sophia leaned forward. Your resume mentions you've been at Midtown for 8 years. Why are you looking to leave now? Marcus hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. The company is restructuring. My position was eliminated. I see, Sophia said, making a note. And how do you feel about that decision? It was a trap question, the kind designed to see if he would badmouth his former employer. Marcus chose his words carefully. I understand business decisions need to be made. Midtown's structure wasn't conducive to work-life balance, particularly for employees with family responsibilities. I'm looking for a company that values both productivity and personal well-being. David nodded approvingly. Speaking of family responsibilities, I understand you're a single parent? Yes, I have an 8-year-old daughter, Emma. How would you handle it if she became ill during work hours? David asked. This position sometimes requires meeting tight deadlines. Marcus felt a flicker of the old anxiety, the constant juggling act, the fear of being seen as unreliable. But before he could answer, Alex spoke up. David, we discussed this. Horizon's flexible work policy exists precisely so parents don't have to choose between their children and their jobs. She turned to Marcus. What David should be asking is how we can support you in balancing those responsibilities. The atmosphere in the room shifted subtly. Marcus realized this wasn't just an interview, it was Alex making a point to her team about the company's values. I appreciate that, Marcus said. In my experience, when employers support work-life balance, employees are more productive, not less. I've never missed a deadline at Midtown, despite the challenges of single parenthood. With the right support system, I believe I could contribute even more effectively here. The rest of the interview flowed more naturally. They discussed specific aspects of the position, the company culture, and Marcus's ideas for improving claims processing efficiency. By the end, even David seemed impressed. We have a few more candidates to interview, Sophia explained as they wrapped up. But we'll be in touch very soon. As Marcus stood to leave, Alex said, I'll walk you out. In the elevator, they were alone for the first time since their encounter on the train. Marcus turned to her. Thank you for this opportunity. Regardless of the outcome, I appreciate you thinking of me. Alex studied him for a moment. Can I ask you something personal? Sure. How do you do it? Balance everything, I mean. Your daughter, your career, your life, all on your own. The question caught Marcus off guard. It wasn't what he expected from a CEO who seemed to have everything figured out. Honestly? Some days I don't. Some days it's all I can do to make sure Emma is fed and homework is done and we both get some sleep. He paused. But other days I look at my daughter and think maybe I'm not screwing up completely. Those days make the hard ones worthwhile. Alex nodded slowly. I admire that. The honesty, I mean. Most people try to present a perfect facade. I don't have the energy for facades anymore, Marcus admitted. Life's too short for that kind of pretense. The elevator reached the lobby, and they stepped out together. At the entrance to the building, Alex hesitated. The position is yours if you want it, she said suddenly. I know we're supposed to deliberate and follow protocol, but I'm the CEO and sometimes that means making executive decisions. Marcus stared at her in surprise. Are you serious? Completely. Sophia was impressed with your technical knowledge, and even David couldn't find fault with your qualifications. The salary is 20% higher than what you were making at Midtown, with better benefits and, as promised, flexible hours. I don't know what to say. Say yes, Alex replied simply. And then maybe say you'd be willing to have dinner with me sometime. To discuss your transition to Horizon, of course. The invitation hung between them, transforming the professional moment into something more personal. Marcus found himself smiling. Yes to the job. And yes to dinner. Though I should warn you, my conversational skills are rusty. It's been a while since I talked to adults about anything other than insurance claims or elementary school projects. I find that hard to believe, Alex said. But I'm willing to risk it. As they shook hands to seal both agreements, Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced in years, the flutter of possibility, the sense that life might still hold surprises worth discovering. Emma was skeptical about the babysitter. Why can't Aunt Jen watch me? She asked, frowning at her reflection as Marcus attempted to braid her hair for school. She lets me stay up late. Aunt Jen lives in Chicago, remember? And staying up late is exactly why she's not my first choice for babysitting. He secured the braid with an elastic and turned her around to face him. Mia comes highly recommended. She's a graduate student who loves science. I thought you might show her your solar system model. Emma considered this. Does she like ice cream? I'm sure she does. Most people do. Can we have ice cream while you're gone? Marcus narrowed his eyes playfully. Are you negotiating with me, young lady? Maybe. Emma grinned, revealing the gap where her front tooth had recently fallen out. Is it working? 1 scoop. After dinner. Which will include vegetables. 2 scoops and I'll eat broccoli. Deal. Marcus held out his hand, and they shook on it solemnly. Now hurry up or we'll be late for school. As they walked to the bus stop, Emma's small hand in his, Marcus marveled at how quickly life had changed. In the 3 weeks since his interview at Horizon, he'd started his new position, settled into a routine that actually allowed him to both work effectively and be present for Emma, and gone on 2 dinner dates with Alexandra Chen. The first date had been slightly awkward, both of them rusty at the dating ritual, both carrying their own emotional baggage. But by the second dinner, they'd found an easy rhythm, talking for hours about everything from business philosophy to favorite childhood books. Alex had laughed at his terrible jokes and listened intently when he spoke about Layla, offering neither platitudes nor pity, just understanding. Daddy, you're smiling at nothing again, Emma observed as they reached the bus stop. Are you thinking about Ms. Alex? Marcus felt his cheeks warm. What makes you say that? Because you get a funny look on your face when you talk about her. Like when Prince Charming sees Cinderella at the ball. Oh really? And when did you become such an expert on romance? Emma rolled her eyes with the exaggerated patience of an 8-year-old explaining the obvious. I watch movies, Dad. I know things. The school bus arrived, saving Marcus from having to respond. He kissed the top of Emma's head and watched her climb aboard, waving until the bus turned the corner. Tonight would be the first time he'd introduced Alex to Emma, just a casual dinner at their apartment, nothing that would put too much pressure on anyone. Still, he couldn't help feeling nervous. Emma had been the center of his world for so long, her opinion mattered more than anyone else's. His phone buzzed with a text from Alex, looking forward to tonight. Should I bring dessert or wine? Or both? Marcus smiled and typed back, Emma has negotiated for ice cream. But wine for the adults would be appreciated. The response came quickly, ice cream and wine it is. See you at 7. Alex stood outside Marcus's apartment building, a bottle of wine in one hand and a bag containing 3 pints of premium ice cream in the other. She'd changed outfits 3 times before settling on dark jeans and a soft blue sweater, casual enough for a family dinner but still put together. Family dinner. The phrase made her heart beat a little faster. This wasn't just another date. Meeting Marcus's daughter meant stepping into the most important part of his life, the core of who he was. She took a deep breath and pressed the buzzer. Marcus opened the door with a warm smile that immediately eased her nerves. Hey, you made it. Traffic was lighter than expected, she said, stepping inside and handing him the wine. And I might have been a little eager. His apartment was smaller than she'd expected, a modest 2-bedroom in a pre-war building. But it was warm and lived in, with books stacked on end tables and framed artwork that looked like it had been created by a child's hand covering one wall. Emma's just finishing setting the table, Marcus explained, leading her toward the kitchen. She's been practicing her hostess skills all afternoon. In the small dining area, a girl with curly brown hair and her father's eyes was carefully arranging napkins beside each plate. She looked up as they entered, her expression curious but reserved. Emma, this is Alex. Alex, this is my daughter, Emma. It's very nice to meet you, Emma, Alex said, suddenly feeling uncharacteristically nervous. Your dad has told me a lot about you. Emma studied her for a moment. Did he tell you I got an A on my solar system project? He did. He said it was the best one in the class. It was, Emma confirmed. Even though Jupiter's rings fell off on the way to school. Dad fixed them with gum and a paper clip. Alex glanced at Marcus, who shrugged with a smile. Improvisation is my specialty. I brought ice cream, Alex said, holding up the bag. Your dad mentioned you're a fan. Emma's eyes widened. 3 kinds? I wasn't sure what flavor you preferred, so I covered the basics: chocolate, vanilla, and strawberry. Chocolate is my favorite, Emma said, warming slightly. Dad likes vanilla, which is boring. Hey, Marcus protested good-naturedly. Classic doesn't mean boring. I'm with Emma on this one, Alex said. Chocolate all the way. Emma's face broke into a smile. See, Dad? Ms. Alex has good taste. Dinner was simpler than Alex was used to, homemade spaghetti and meatballs with garlic bread and the promised broccoli, but somehow more satisfying than the expensive restaurant meals she typically ate. Emma gradually lost her shyness, peppering Alex with questions about her job. Do you have a big office with a view? Her hobbies. Can you ice skate? I'm learning, but I fall down a lot. And her favorite books. Have you read Harry Potter? Dad's reading it to me, but he does the voices all wrong. Alex found herself enchanted by this miniature version of Marcus, the same thoughtful eyes, the same quick wit, but with an openness that life hadn't yet tempered. She caught Marcus watching them interact, a soft expression on his face that made her heart flutter in a way it hadn't in years. After dinner, while Marcus cleaned up, Emma insisted on showing Alex her room. It was a child's sanctuary, walls painted a soft yellow, bookshelves overflowing, a desk covered in art supplies, and a bed heaped with stuffed animals. This is Pancake, Emma said, holding up a well-loved stuffed rabbit. Mom gave him to me when I was a baby. And this is Starlight, and this is Professor Whiskers. As Emma introduced each stuffed animal, Alex noticed a framed photo on the nightstand, a beautiful woman with Emma's curls, holding a toddler-aged Emma on her lap, both of them laughing at the camera. That's my mom, Emma said, following Alex's gaze. She's in heaven now. She was very beautiful, Alex said softly. You look like her. Emma nodded solemnly. Dad says I have her smile and her brains. But I have his stubbornness. That sounds about right, Alex agreed, earning a giggle from Emma. Do you have kids, Ms. Alex? The question caught her off guard. No, I don't. Why not? Don't you like kids? Emma, Marcus's voice came from the doorway. Remember what we discussed about personal questions? It's okay, Alex assured him. I don't mind. She turned back to Emma. I do like kids. I just haven't had the right opportunity to have my own yet. Emma considered this. Well, you could practice with me if you want. Dad says practice makes perfect. Alex felt something catch in her throat, a mixture of emotion she couldn't quite name. I'd like that very much, if it's okay with your dad. Marcus's eyes met hers over Emma's head, warm and understanding. I think that could be arranged. Later, after Emma had been tucked in with promises of ice cream for breakfast, firmly denied by Marcus, they sat on the small balcony outside the living room, sharing the wine Alex had brought. She's amazing, Alex said. You've done an incredible job with her. Marcus looked out at the city lights. I can't take all the credit. Layla laid a strong foundation. And Emma's naturally resilient. Sometimes I think she's handling everything better than I am. Kids are adaptable. But they also reflect what they see. Alex turned to face him. She sees a father who keeps showing up, who fixes Jupiter's rings with gum and paper clips, who reads Harry Potter with all the wrong voices but reads it anyway. Marcus smiled, a hint of sadness in his eyes. I just want her to have a normal, happy childhood, despite everything. Some days I worry it's not enough, that I'm not enough. From what I've seen tonight, you're more than enough. Alex hesitated, then added, "She asked if I have children." "I heard. Sorry about that, we're still working on appropriate conversation topics." "Don't be sorry. It was a fair question." Alex took a sip of wine. "I always thought I'd have children someday. It was part of the plan, build the company, get married, start a family. But the company took more time than I expected, and then the engagement." She trailed off, not wanting to delve into the painful end of her relationship with Richard, who had decided 6 weeks before their wedding that he wasn't ready for the commitment, and had promptly demonstrated this by running off with a 22-year-old model. "Life rarely follows our plans," Marcus said quietly. "Layla and I had it all mapped out, 2 kids, house in the suburbs by the time she was 35, maybe a dog. Then the diagnosis came, and suddenly we were planning for a completely different future. One I'd be facing alone." Alex reached for his hand, twining her fingers with his. "I can't imagine how hard that was." "Still is. The hardest part was watching Emma grieve. Children that young aren't supposed to understand loss that profound, but she did. She still does." He squeezed Alex's hand. "But tonight was the first time I've seen her connect with someone new so quickly. She likes you." "The feeling is mutual," Alex said. "She's extraordinary." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the sounds of the city a gentle backdrop to their thoughts. Finally, Marcus turned to her. "Can I ask you something? That day on the train, when you whispered about people hiding their broken pieces, what made you say that?" Alex considered the question. "I suppose I was talking about myself as much as anyone. After Richard left, I became obsessed with appearing unaffected. Perfect CEO, perfect life, perfect control. But inside..." She shook her head. "Inside, I was furious and heartbroken and terrified that I'd end up alone because I'd chosen career over connection one too many times. And now? Now I'm sitting on a balcony with a man who doesn't pretend to have all the answers, whose daughter just invited me to practice being a parent, drinking wine that cost less than my lunch yesterday and enjoying it more." She smiled. "I'd say that's progress." Marcus leaned forward and kissed her softly. "Definitely progress." 6 months later, Marcus stood in the doorway of Emma's classroom, watching as she explained her science fair project to Alex, who was kneeling beside the display board, asking questions with genuine interest. The project, an experiment on plant growth under different light conditions, had been Alex's suggestion, and the two of them had spent weekends gathering data and creating charts. Mr. Reed, Emma's teacher, Ms. Patel, approached with a smile. "Emma's project is quite impressive. Very detailed analysis for someone her age." "She had some help," Marcus admitted, nodding toward Alex. "My girlfriend is something of a science enthusiast." The word girlfriend still felt new on his tongue, though they'd been officially dating for months now. Alex spent several nights a week at their apartment, had her own key, and had recently started leaving clothes in his closet. Emma had taken to the relationship with surprising ease, delighted to have another adult in her life who took her seriously and never talked down to her. "Well, it's wonderful to see Emma so engaged," Ms. Patel said. "She's been much happier this term. More confident." Marcus watched as Emma threw her head back laughing at something Alex had said. "We all have." After the science fair, they went for pizza to celebrate Emma's second-place ribbon. First place went to Tyler, but his dad is a real scientist, so it doesn't count, Emma had declared. "I was thinking," Alex said as they walked home, Emma skipping ahead with her ribbon. "My lease is up next month." Marcus glanced at her. "Oh. And I spend most nights at your place anyway." "True. And my apartment is 3 times the size of yours, with an extra bedroom that would be perfect for Emma, and it's closer to her school." Marcus stopped walking. "Alex Chen, are you asking us to move in with you?" She bit her lip, suddenly looking uncertain, an expression he rarely saw on the confident CEO. "Is it too soon?" "I know it's only been 6 months, but... He cut her off with a kiss. It's not too soon. Not for me, anyway. But we should talk to Emma about it. They caught up to Emma, who had stopped to examine a particularly interesting crack in the sidewalk. Emma, Alex has something she'd like to discuss with you, Marcus said. Emma looked up expectantly. Is it about getting a dog? Because I've been researching dog breeds that are good in apartments, and... It's not about a dog, Alex laughed. Though that's a conversation we can have later. It's about my apartment. I was wondering how you'd feel if you and your dad came to live there with me. Emma's eyes widened. Live together? Like a family? Something like that, Alex said carefully. Your dad and I care about each other very much, and I care about you too. But it would be a big change, and we want to know how you feel about it. Emma was quiet for a moment, her face serious as she considered the proposition. Would I still have my own room? Absolutely, Alex assured her. A bigger one, with a window seat where you can read. And would we still have spaghetti night on Tuesdays? Of course, Marcus said. Our traditions wouldn't change. Emma looked between them. And would you be like, my stepmom? Alex exchanged a glance with Marcus, who nodded encouragingly. Not officially, not yet. But maybe someday, if that's something we all want. Emma nodded decisively. Okay. We can live together. But I still want a dog. Marcus laughed, pulling his daughter into a hug. We'll discuss the dog situation later. For now, let's focus on the moving part. As they continued walking, Emma between them holding both their hands, Marcus marveled at how life could change so completely in less than a year. From that morning on the train when a CEO had literally fallen into his lap, to this moment, planning a future together, it was more than he could have imagined when he was drowning in grief and responsibility. Alex caught his eye over Emma's head and smiled, as if reading his thoughts. In that smile, he saw everything he needed to know, that she understood the journey they were on, that she was committed to both him and Emma, that the broken pieces they'd both carried were slowly mending into something new and beautiful. 1 year to the day after their first meeting on the train, Marcus and Alex found themselves back at the same station, this time deliberately. Emma was spending the weekend with Marcus's sister, who had flown in from Chicago specifically to give the couple some time alone for their anniversary. I can't believe you want to recreate our meet-cute by taking the subway, Alex said, shaking her head as they stood on the platform. Most men would go for dinner at a fancy restaurant. We're doing that too, Marcus reminded her. But I thought it would be fitting to start where it all began. Besides, how many CEOs can say they fell for someone by literally falling into their lap on public transportation? Hopefully just one, Alex laughed. I'd hate to think this is a common occurrence. The train arrived, crowded as it had been that day a year ago. They found a seat, just one, as before, and Alex deliberately sat on Marcus's lap. Excuse me, sir, she said with mock formality. I seem to have fallen on you. How terribly clumsy of me. It's my lucky day, he replied, playing along. Though you seem to have spilled coffee on me again. Have I? Alex looked down in alarm, then realized he was teasing. Very funny. As the train rumbled through the city, Marcus grew more serious. You know, that day changed everything for me. Not just because I met you, but because for the first time since Layla died, I felt like maybe my life wasn't just about surviving day to day. Like maybe there could be joy again, not just responsibility. Alex leaned her forehead against his. That day changed everything for me too. I'd spent so long building walls around myself, convincing everyone, including myself, that I didn't need anything beyond my career. Then you looked at me with those tired eyes and I just recognized something. A kindred spirit, maybe. A fellow member of the Broken Pieces Club, Marcus suggested. Exactly. Though I think we've done a pretty good job of putting those pieces back together this year. The train slowed as it approached their stop. Before they stood to leave, Marcus reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "I was going to wait until dinner," he said, his voice suddenly nervous. "But this feels right. Here, where it all started." Alex's eyes widened as he opened the box to reveal a simple but elegant diamond ring. "Alexandra Chen, this past year has been the most unexpected gift. You've brought joy back into my life and Emma's. You've shown me that second chances at happiness are possible. Will you marry me?" The train came to a stop, the doors opening as passengers began to move around them. But Alex and Marcus remained still, the moment suspended between them. "Yes," she whispered, tears filling her eyes. "Yes, I'll marry you." As he slipped the ring onto her finger, the other passengers, who had gradually realized what was happening, broke into spontaneous applause. Someone called out, "Congratulations," and others joined in with well wishes. Marcus and Alex made their way off the train, hand in hand, stepping onto the platform where they'd parted ways a year earlier, he with a coffee stain and a business card, she with the memory of a connection that had felt significant even then. "So," Marcus said as they emerged onto the street. "When should we tell Emma?" "As soon as possible," Alex replied. "She's been dropping hints about wanting to be a flower girl for months now." Marcus laughed. "You noticed that too?" "I thought I was imagining it. She's subtle as a bulldozer. Last week she asked me if I thought white dresses were overrated for weddings." "What did you tell her?" "That I've always been partial to ivory." Alex squeezed his hand. "She's going to be thrilled, you know." "I know. She adores you." Marcus pulled her close as they walked. "Almost as much as I do." As they made their way to the restaurant where they'd had their first official date, Alex thought about the whispered words that had started it all. Sometimes the people who seem to have it all together are just better at hiding their broken pieces. She'd been right that day. But what she hadn't known then was that sometimes those broken pieces could fit together to create something stronger and more beautiful than either person could have created alone. A CEO and a single dad, two wounded souls who had found each other in the chaos of a crowded train. It wasn't the love story she'd planned for herself, but as Alex had learned over the past year, the best parts of life rarely followed a plan. And she wouldn't have it any other way. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more tales of unexpected connections and second chances at love. Remember, sometimes the most life-changing moments happen when we least expect them, even on a crowded morning train. Until next time, this is Heartstring Stories, reminding you that every broken heart has the capacity to love again, perhaps even more deeply than before.